But it's got to be the whole thing.
The whole thing.
It's got to be a big enough number to sustain. You believe in the dream?
I believe the children are the future.
Oh, now you being funny. Come on, get happy. This the American dream. This ain't got shit to do with nobody but you. This is what it was made for. Before this invention, you couldn't get rich without either convincing people you were sent by God, divine right, or that they were going to hell if they didn't pay you. Thousands of years of that shit. Fun, huh? Until some really cunning persons was like, hey, you actually ain't got to do all that. Just invest.
Welcome to American Theater. You are seeing B-roll footage from Steppenwolf's Windfall, courtesy of HMS Media. I'm Gabriela Furtado Coutinho, digital editor and Chicago artist, and today I have a very special offering for you, a conversation with a few of the creative minds orchestrating this key new work development process at Steppenwolf Theatre Company during its 50th anniversary season. The world premiere of Tarell Alvin McCraney's Windfall runs through May 31st and tells a story of money, family, loss, activism, and communal dreams. In this world where miracles can happen, a Chicago father is offered a cash settlement for the loss of his child. The in-the-round and often musical, participatory nature of the piece aims to place the burden and privilege of thought, opinion, and choice in the audience's hands. I got to see audience members engrossed in debate after the show was over, a testament to the expansive, delicate staging by Owoye Timbo, form-shifting lyrical writing, and, as Glenn Davis emphasized to me, the brilliance and flexibility of each actor. Here to discuss this process are playwright and ensemble member Tarell Alvin McCraney, ensemble actor and co-artistic director Glenn Davis, dramaturg and literary casting associate Bryar Barboka, and director of new play development Jonathan L. Green.
Of course, this play has so many different thematic elements to it. When I think of the palette, I see so many different colors. I think about the level of audience interaction. I think about the miracles that occur, the biblical references, martyrdom, saviorism, anti-capitalism, money, authority, A Christmas Carol, protest. There's so much that's baked into this play, and I'm just so interested in how it all began. It has been described as the play that, you were commissioned to write, Tarell, that you were scared to write, that you were asked to write something that wouldn't be done with necessarily ease or comfort. Can you all walk me through that commissioning process and those early days as the seeds of the play began to be planted?
So this play received significant funding, both the commission and the development of the play, from the Joyce Foundation. The Joyce Foundation has supported Tarell's work and Steppenwolf's work before. And when Tarell started talking about this play, they were very interested. I think it hits a lot of the various foci of their funding, and so we knew really from the beginning. I guess this was like in the fall of 2023 that this play would be commissioned, developed, and premiere in our 50th season. That's what I have.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing that is, first of all, I wasn't misquoted, but I think some of what I said about this play scaring me makes it seem like the other times I write plays, I'm not scared. I'm always scared when I write plays. I'm always terrified when they go up, and the saving grace about plays is that they can forever change and shift, as opposed to when you make a film, the hardest part about, or the toughest part about making a film is that it gets made, right? It's there forever and it's sort of ensconced in a way that you can't shift. But the first time, and that would be at Steppenwolf on a very large platform, on a play that, even though commissioned, it may have been commissioned in 23, but I certainly didn't start writing it until 25. The time the time it takes to develop a play can be, and you look at things like Angels in America, you look at things like can be over not only years but over many iterations. The production in Chicago, I think, will be different than the production elsewhere, and so it's a very condensed, or was a very condensed development process, one which we had to do in the sort of busiest season of a lot of the artists' life. I was an artistic director and running a theater out west, while also planning and directing a show myself, writing another play and finishing that play while Glenn, John Michael Hill, Jonathan, Audrey, and even Namir were all in other shows. Alana were in Purpose. Literally, we were rehearsing on days that they were off of Purpose, or that Namir could take off from Bug, while Audrey was also running a theater, while Jonathan and Bryar were also getting a season ready. So I'm so grateful for the time, but it was one that was compressed and condensed, and as you said, the play has a lot in it. And so I think something that became a guiding principle for me was, okay, well, if we're going to deal with all these things, if we've got this compressed time to do it, the one thing I'm going to do is make sure that there's a level of joy that this play brings. And I'm so happy to say that I succeeded in doing that. In fact, what I really want to do is make a commercial at some point for Steppenwolf and being like, hey, I know this play is about some tough things. I really know that you might not want to talk about police brutality. And yet, we're having a good time doing it. You have like 6 or 7 people on stage who are just making your life much easier to have this in-depth conversation. And we succeeded in doing that. And I think that was a part of one of the things I felt like I owed the Joyce Foundation. Head of Passes, which is a play that I love, is an incredible play, but it's a hard play to sit through. And I really wanted to give them a play where that dealt with the issues that are, as Jonathan said, fundamental to their work, but in a way that invited people into the conversation. And I think we do that in Windfall. I don't think anybody leaves going, that was hard to sit through, as opposed to, wow, that was some tough things that we brought up, and now I've got to think about that. And that's a win for us.
Yeah, something I think is so extraordinary about the piece is that we actually get to participate in the musicality of your work, which is such an incredible hallmark, I think specifically about the brother-sister plays, that kind of community catharsis, lyricism, um, of incorporating body and breath feels really exciting. I also really enjoyed Alana's character who morphs throughout the play. It feels really full circle for you all to be collaborating, of course, by the nature of Steppenwolf being an ensemble theater. You all have a wonderful shared vocabulary, but also, you know, brother sister cycle, Tarell, Glenn, you all have been like very close collaborators in like sharing a vocabulary about a world for a while. So it was really lovely to see old friends come back in together. I'm really interested in how you all construct a room together. I got really excited in the play that the form mirrored the content. There were moments in which we dip into magical realism, in which, oh my gosh, all of a sudden we're breaking the fourth wall and we're talking about liberation. And I've had the privilege of having an insider ear and hearing about also how that felt in the room and how the process had those threads imbued into the way that people related to one another. So I would love to hear a little bit from each of you about how you established that in the room from day one.
Well, I think that we'd be remiss not to, first of all, give kudos to our director.
Yeah.
This is, I always say about Tarell's work that it is every actor can't do it. It's you just mentioned he breaks the fourth wall. There's music, there's singing, there's he takes from other great dramatists over the years and puts his own spin on an idea or a notion. He takes from religion, spirituality, different cosmologies. He just like takes it all. And he's heard me say these things before, so I'm happy to just throw it all at him. But like one moment his play feels Shakespearean, and then the next is like just, oh, that's a conversation, that's a take on a conversation I've had with him over the last 20 years, right? So he pulls from so many things, and you have to have the right director who can create the room that everyone feels comfortable and feels at ease to do the best work that they can. And again, I've seen, because Tarell and I have been friends for a very long time and close collaborators. I've seen other actors who are fine actors, wonderful actors, not be able to pull off what Tarell's plays are asking for in many cases. And so I think at the center of it, you have to have the right director. And I think we had an amazing director who was able to create such a warm room. And I'll talk about her a little bit more in a second. But I think the second thing is Tarell has many gifts, and I personally would not want to do a Tarell play without him in the room, for me personally, because I've always had him in the room. And so he and I have a second hand where I can go, hey, what did you mean here? Or and I've known him for so long. I'm like, if I have questions, I know everybody in the room has questions, right? And so Tarell there's a methodology to his work. There are things that little clues into the way he works and what he's put down on the page. His plays are like symphonies, right? And you hear the music, and when you hit it right, it's like hitting. I golf, and so when you hit a golf ball in that sweet spot, you're like, ooh, I just hit it, and it's a rarity, right? And when you get it right, I remember a few weeks ago I called up Tarell, and I called Tarell up, and I was like, hey man, this moment, da da da. I was like, I didn't get it right when you were here, but I think I figured it out. And he's like, cool, good for you, man. Hope that works out, But for me, it's like, oh man, because it's so difficult, it's so hard. So I think finding your way through Tarell's language and the sort of orchestrations that he has in the play is hugely difficult. But when you have the right actors, the right sort of spiritual elements in the room, you get the right people in the room under the given circumstances, I think the play just sings. So for me, I've always loved coming back to Tarell's work, from brother sister plays to Head of Passes to now. I think he's a dramatist like no other. I'm hugely biased because he's my best friend, but also I've been able to be inside of his plays and experience what he does very, very closely. So I think I think he's exceptional. That being said, also there's a comfortability you need to have with language like this. I imagine, if I was a part of the Lord Chamberlain's Men back when Shakespeare was doing his thing, there's a second hand. Like Tarell knows what I do well as an actor. He also knows my deficiencies as an actor, and because it's an ensemble theater, that's what we do, right? And whether it's Tracy Letts or Bruce Norris or Tina Landa, whoever it is who's writing for the company members, they're attuned to what we do well. And I think that's one of the great gifts of being in this company. And so Alana and myself and John Michael Hill and now Namir Smallwood, who I think is working with Tarell for the first time in this play, we feel there's a kinship we have, and like, oh, we're figuring all this out together. And so I feel that this is my safe place. It's immensely hard, and also we're doing it in the round, so it's even harder. But I feel so comfortable in this space because of our leadership in terms of who's shepherding this play through the room. So I feel personally, there's no better place than to be in a Tarell McCraney play.
Just to kind of add on to that, I mean, I totally agree with the personalities and just like the love that everyone in the room has for each other, and especially the ensemble members who have worked together for so long and have known each other for so long. I was a little worried coming into it, even though like I'm on staff here at Steppenwolf, but it's kind of hard to break into a group of new friends essentially. But I never felt, yeah, like that was sort of all just went away on that like first time we all met, because there's just such a warmth and an openness to everyone in the room. And also too, I think it is like in the nature of the play as well. Like we talked so much about wanting this play to be accessible, and like whenever we felt stuck, going back to this place of being like we should be able to do this play anywhere, and like do it for anyone, and how do we honor that moving forward, and so I think that the um yeah, just like the it is like baked into the play, this like openness and warmth and welcome that I think just definitely reverberated throughout the room during this process.
Something that I was thinking about as you all were answering this question is that the very first piece of developmental work that we did as a company on the show was Tarell and Owoye, who directed the play, and a handful of actors got into a room together and talked about money for like 3 or 4 days, and so like this was before anything had been written down, or at least before Tarell was ready to share anything with us. And it was just like a really wonderful generative process where we were like able to teach each other about money. I think none of us has had a ton of it, and so there was a really beautiful generosity in there. And then we had a reading of a draft and another workshop, and then we had a music workshop. But then also, I think it was maybe the second week of rehearsal, Tarell and Owoye said, "Hey, could we get an audience into the rehearsal room?" This is, they hadn't staged anything yet, but because this play is in many ways interactive with the audience, I wanted to like sort of test run the play with a group of people. So we had, I don't know if it was 80 or 100 people gather, community members, other theater makers, in the rehearsal room upstairs, and the actors were at music stands, and we just like um, uh, uh, experienced as a large group what the process was like for the play, not only the product. And so I just wanted to point out that like that first workshop, generative workshop, we were just talking about money, and not really about character at all. And that the last piece of development, that was not just regular rehearsal, was in a rehearsal room with 100 people surrounding it. I think that's really unique in regional theater, but also I feel like it really fits the play and the form of the play and the spirit of the play pretty well.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
beautiful.
oh,
And I'll go ahead. I was
oh,
just gonna say, you just wrote an op-ed that made me think of what Jonathan was saying for the Tribune, Glenn, about taking risks and being bold.
yeah, and I think that it was, this is the first play that was commissioned for the In the Round space at Steppenwolf, which is called the Ensemble Theater. And it's a tall task because most writers, most playwrights, dramatists, when they're conceiving of a play, they're conceiving of it at the very least in a proscenium or thrust, right? So we've been trained that way. Very few, institutions, even today, teach you to write for anything other than, the audience is on one side and the actors on the other, right? Or the performance is happening on the other. So we wanted to, Audrey Francis, who's the artistic director, along with myself at Steppenwolf, we were sitting around going, okay, we want something very relevant, very vital, very important for the 50th anniversary season to be the sort of centerpiece. And who do we want to write that? And obviously, Tarell comes to mind right away, and he said yes. He had the time in his schedule. Or he probably didn't have the time in his schedule, but he made it work. But you can't pass up that opportunity. And who better to christen that space than someone with Tarell's gifts? Like I said, Tarell can write literally anything you want him to do. If it's poetic, if it needs to be a straight play, if that has to have a huge musical element, if it's a comedy, Tarell just does it all. So for him to write for the theater felt sort of, for this play, for the to be the first play commissioned for this theater, felt right. But then and the thing I wanted to mention earlier is that you have to have the right director. And so pairing Tarell with Owoye Temple, who had directed in this space before, she directed Leroy and Lucy with John Michael Hill in it the season before, to invite her back because she did such a great job, and she's just a dream to work with as an artistic director. I was very interested to see what it'd be like to be directed by her. And I can attest to, I'm in a long line of actors now who just think she is amazing. She came in, and the first day there's a sort of spirituality she has with the theater. She's sort of at one with the space itself, and she invites everyone in, and it's so warm and charming and charismatic. And this was a huge moment for all of us. The moment never seemed to be bigger than her. She was always leading with generosity and grace. And so to be invited into that room, the room that, I work here, right? And for her to invite me into the room as an actor just felt, she was like a balm, And so watching her and Tarell, and I've seen Tarell work with quite a few directors now, but watching him, he and her work together, and I think it was the first time outside of like workshops, they seemed like they were just made of the same stuff. And so as an actor, when you can trust your writer and your director on the same page or just in lockstep, and Tarell's a important figure in the cosmology of American theater, but the way she was able to say, hey, this is our room together. You wrote the play, so if you have something, she was never intimidated and never felt like the need to make it about her, right? And that just gives you full trust as an actor that your director just sees you and sees the room for what it is and invites you in, and it just felt it was a dreamlike scenario. So I think that I just wanted to say having her at the helm was one of our keys to success, along with obviously Tarell's writing.
Amazing. Yeah, I would love to also hear a bit more about that kind of early development process. You were talking, Jonathan, about the particularities of it. I think it's so interesting to think about Owoye being in a room, just talking about money as opposed to, doing what like quote unquote a traditional new play development process might look like. Could you and Bryar speak a little bit more to how this was unique from perhaps other new play processes that you've seen at Steppenwolf, or perhaps how it's similar but unique to how other theaters may operate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what was unique about this process was that, which is not necessarily unique at Steppenwolf, but maybe for other theaters, is that so many ensemble members were involved in it, and ensemble members who have a lot of history with one another. And so I think that I think in a new play development process, understandably so, usually you spend a not insignificant amount of time just trying to get to know each other and figure out like the room and how this room is going to work. And I think in a space like this, we were, uh, because of how much how many deep relationships already existed within the room. We were able to just dive in. And I think that Tarell just totally leads from a place of like pure curiosity and is very much like I want to know what you all think about this, you know? I mean I think I think Tarell's a person who knows himself very well and like knows what he thinks and so is so interested in what other people think and how that might be similar to or different from his or something he's never thought about before in a very like beautifully generous way. And so I think that we were able to just starting this process from a place of just like pure curiosity and talking about like what money means in your life.
The only thing I'd add to that is um, this kind of process certainly is not something we do for every play, but I know Terrell has worked this way before, and he said, "Hey, could we just like I know some people are in Chicago, some people are in LA, some people in New York, but like, can we just get into a room so that I can start writing?" And so we just said yes. Terrell, I think I remember you saying that when you were just starting the process for head of passes, that you got the actors into a room and brought some pages from the Bible in, and just those conversations were the basis of that play.
Oh, Terrell, are you okay? Perfect.
The Yeah, we just brought the Bible in. I mean, I think at the end of the day, I am so fortunate to have a home company like Steppenwolf and to have an ensemble where theater can still be practiced in a way that is, as Martha Levy, our former artistic director, would say, as a way of practicing being a human, right? And so it's always so interesting when we sort of try to manufacture plays, you know, sort of somebody goes away and puts it in a conveyor belt and it comes out in a certain way, and then we add some things to it later as it comes down the line, and then we like produce it for people. We kind of mass produce a thing. And there's a kind of bespokeness that we miss that allows us to be human, which is to say, you know, whenever you're trying to figure out if a conversation's worthy, you sort of go, hey, let me say this out loud to myself. And then you go, well, let me say this out loud to the people who know me and see if they think, hey, you should keep that to yourself. And then as you start having that conversation, because there are certainly parts of the conversation about money that we don't have in the play anymore, right? That are definitely important to me, definitely maybe even important to us in the room, but that have nothing to do with like what we decided the sort of thrust of our conversation would be. And I think that's way more thrilling to me, or was more thrilling in this moment to me than anything else. It's like, oh, we have now touched on something where all of us have like equal stake in this conversation in a spiritual, political, and social way. As Bryar said when they first came in, this idea of like, wait, I just want my people to like be able to live, right? And Glenn's dream for universal healthcare, and my dream for like free art, like all of these things have something very central to it, which is that money has an access to that. And isn't that absurd and also like important for us to be saying? But we're not saying it. None of us said it. None of us were like the people who are making the accessibility for these things possible for life, longevity, and the pursuit of happiness. Are pretending like it's not a conversation about money. And I think once we sort of all looked at each other and went, oh shit, we have to have this really fundamental conversation about the ways in which we treat each other and each other's bodies as it pertains to money, I think it's really important. And as Jonathan said, we invited community folks to come in and have conversations, and even things that sort of felt specific to them, that they were like, yo, this feels like my life. We were like, yes, we totally get that. But we are trying to make sure that this conversation stays as open as possible. So if there is something in this process that is making you feel this is too specific to you, if it sounds like we're telling the story of, you know, Trayvon Martin, or like, we want to make sure that that you think about those things, but that you're not having that dialogue, because the conversation you need to have, the practice of being human that you need to do, is in the theater every night. And the moment we ask you to think about something else that's outside of the theater, you've just checked out. You just went there. We want you to stay here with Mono and his wrestling with value and money and this generational conversation about money. And so I only could get to that by having a porous conversation, and sometimes it's hard to do that in the American theater. You sort of go in and people keep, and as Glenn said, for some reason people think of me as like a figure that must know everything, and so I'll be like, hey, is this dumb? And people will be like, oh, I'm like, hey, stop all that shit, stop all that. Like that helps nobody. Nobody's helped by you all being deferential to my dumb idea, right? And I appreciate Bryar so much, because I think we came in one day and literally reordered the play. Like we sort of went, hey, this is out of order. We need to know this first. And we literally were like, okay, so we played like Yahtzee with parts of the play and moved shit around. The actors came in like, what the fuck? And we were like, no, this is much better. Listen, Bryar, and then every day after that, I'd be like, Bryar, is there anything else that we're like? Don't hold back now. This is. But I think you get into this space where everything is so rarefied and siloed that you're afraid to have these conversations. When at the end of the day, it's like, well, it's going to be out in front of people at some point, where none of us are making enough money for us to be like terrified about, what I mean? Like I get it when it's like, oh, this episode costs $10 million and ooh, if you fuck it up, what, right? Excuse my language, American theater. But like at the end of the day, the most precious thing we have is time. And so let's not waste it. And that felt immediate in the room. It felt like we every day that we came into the rehearsal process, and if there is only the critique I have, and it's not of Steppenwolf or anybody, it's like, how do we invest in more time with this conversation? I would love for us to be like, okay, cool, now we've had a run, let's have a conversation about what's next, and then when we do it again, right? Because that we will only have gotten stronger, smarter, more enriched by the conversations we've had. How do we continue that? How do we continue to grow that? And at current, the systems in which we operate just don't allow us to do that.
Absolutely. That conveyor belting of theater feels devastating. I'm from Brazil, and a lot of Brazilian theater artists call American theater fast food theater. Um, so I really appreciate what you said about that. And I'm really curious now to hear from each of you what got left out of the script that you're excited to see be tackled in perhaps future work that you do. The darlings that had to be cut.
I don't know that there's anything that got left out that I wish were back in. I'm excited to see where there's room for new things, right? So when I see the show again, I'm going to be like, oh, wait, this is clearly something the audience wants more of. How do I give them that? But there's nothing that we left on the cutting room floor that I feel. I'm sure there might be things that, some song or something, because there was like 5 more songs in it, and like language shifts and like all kinds of amazing things were happening. We were like, yeah, next time, like we'll save some of this magic, right? But no part of me, in the last times I've seen it, no part of me was like longing for those things. I was absolutely happy that they were not there. And in fact, there are some more things that I'm like, yeah, we'll probably get a little less of that next time. But to your point, in watching it, I know that there will be things that I go, the audience is craving more of this. And even on the last, like opening day, we had to add extra things because the audience was just craving more conversation with Alana at the end of the play. They were like, nope, we want to have more conversation here. And I was like, oh shit. So.
I would say, well, And when Terrell says we had it on the last day, he means like the last weekend before we froze, just so we're clear. Equity. No, what I would say is the, there's, particularly in the first production of a play, um, the writer is working with the director and the actors to find all the things that help to streamline the play, right? And so any darlings that were lost, and Terrell's a huge collaborator, so he's walking you through, hey, this is why this line was cut or this monologue was cut. And then Terrell's also like, hey, if you feel like it's impeding your performance on or you're missing it for some reason, let's have a conversation about it, right? And so that feels that feels very satisfying as an actor. So everything that was cut, we sort of walk through each and every iteration of what that looked like, and then Terrell has a way of finding the sort of the meat of the conversation. So Terrell looks at it and goes, "Oh, I don't need this. This is getting in the way of the thing that I'm really after, right?" And so once you find it as once he finds it as a writer, and then you say it as a performer, it just feels good. You're like, "Oh yeah, you helped me out. You helped me." Instead of making a left, I could just go straight to it. So that I say all that to say, there's nothing that I think, oh, I'm missing that from a previous draft. What I will say is, um, as Terrell just alluded to, there are things that you go, oh man, I wish we had more time so we can like explore that more or do that more. And I don't know if that's ever gonna not be the case for a first production of a play by a writer of Terrell's caliber. Like you're like, okay, I wish like I said, you find things, particularly when you're working on a new play, you're finding things. You by the time you feel like you're on your deer legs on opening night, you're like, all right, we just solidified some things before we froze a couple of days ago. So like, are these things working? Hopefully they are, right? Because you're rehearsing all through previews. And then I had a friend once tell me on opening night of a play, he walks up to me, he goes, "Great work, man." And he says in my ear, he whispers in my ear, "This is now the real work begins." And you get it because now we get to take this play with us in the audience and figure out what's the conversation we want to have every night, and are there things that I wanted to explore more or more heavily or more deeply, and now you're doing it, but you can't shift anything, right? The performance is so. I think, and I'm sure this play will be done all over, a bunch of times in different places, as it should, because it's a beautiful play. But you do feel that like, oh man, if I had more time. But also, me, Jonathan, and Bryar and Terrell have this experience probably with every play that you do, and for the first time, you're like, oh man, more time. So to Terrell's point, when the Brits are rehearsing for 8 weeks or 10 weeks, or they'll rehearse, then take for 3 weeks, and take a week off, and then come back to it. Just doing a play. I've done a play 4 times once, and doing it the first time to doing it the fourth time, I learned so much, right? Because I grew as an artist, I grew as a man, and then you're like, okay, and the audience is different. So now that the culmination of that is now we have the finished product, as it were. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't think any of us ever feel like, oh, we got it, this is done, put it in the bag. I want to have another crack at it.
What I love about what you said also is I think a lot of audiences felt the same way, in that the conversations kept going on and on and on. And then, oh, let's get a drink and talk about this. Let's get dinner. There's so many delicious moments of ambiguity in which people had questions. Is Eli gone? Is Eli not gone? Should he take the money? Should he not take the money? What is he signing away by taking the money? And I think that's a really central question. What is being signed away? I saw Briar unmuted. Would you like to jump in?
No, I was gonna say I very much agree with what Terrell and Glenn were saying about, yeah, there's nothing really in the play that got cut. I mean, I think the play is threaded together very specifically, and that there's a very specific story being told. And I just feel like there are and also these characters, all of them are so full and like feel so like they have so much history and have so much like personality that I mean, not to make more work for Terrell, but I'm like, I want to read a play about all of these characters, where the play is like about them specifically.
I would love to give Terrell the time to share any closing thoughts, um, curiosities that you were left with after working on this play. I love that you mentioned the fluidity of the script. What are you eager to tackle as you see future productions, or as perhaps you embark on your next project as a writer?
No, yeah, Bryar's right. I like walked away being like, I gotta write a play about each of these people now. Like, and some parts of me feels like ready to do that. Some part of me is like, actually, I need to take a break before I start writing the, Miss Second play or, the whatever. But like, there's definitely so much that sprang eternal in watching these characters that you were like, oh God, I now want to know that backstory, or I now want to bring that to the fore. So, yeah, it is a sort of generous process that yielded me so much. So I'm excited. I'm so happy to do it, and as I told Bryar and Jonathan, like I'm itching to work on something for the ensemble soon.
You so much. I really, really appreciate it. I know Terrell has to hop off. I really appreciate your time and generosity. And everyone else, if there are any closing thoughts that you would like to share, or questions that you would like to answer for the audience or not to answer for the audience, perhaps you want to share something that, like an audience conversation that you had, even, or an audience reaction, just any sort of closing moments that you would like to leave with our listeners.
I will say, I've had conversations at one particular. I don't want to give the play away, but for those who haven't seen it, but there's 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 some there's a lot of things happening on stage. This role is infused into this play, and the takes that I get, like people coming up to me afterwards, like this is what I think happened, are vast, far and wide. And I'm like, wait, and I'm like, how did you get that? Like walk me through your thinking on this one. And with conviction, like they talk to Tarell, like, no, I'm telling you, this is what Eli was doing. This is where they were. That moment where Marcus had to, this is what. And I'm like, oh wow. I'm like, I think you know stuff Tarell don't know. So it's one of those plays where you're gonna come into it and you might see it with your best friend or a family member, and you all have completely different takes at the end of the play as to what happened, which I think is a true testament to the brilliance of Terrell's writing, because he doesn't tell you what you're supposed to think or you're supposed to know. At the end of the play, where the audience is asked to be a part of a major decision, we never get one. It's never one homogenous group giving the same answer. It's always differing opinions. So I think that's a true testament to how well constructed this play is.
So many miles away, heaven knows that I long for you every night, and sometimes I yearn through the day. Oh, come on, clap, distant lover. You think about me, say a prayer for me. Please, 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 please. Every night, and sometimes I yearn